Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 140 of ReelBlend, a podcast that's now sponsored by Die Hard Batteries. In this week's episode, we're going to react to the Mank trailer, the full Mank trailer. We are going to give our reviews of Borat subsequent movie film, and we have Adam Brody and director Evan Morgan, who are going to be joining us to talk about their outstanding film, The Kid Detective, which you guys might have seen us tweeting on social media. By us, I mean, first off, myself. I'm Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at Cinemablend, and joined, as always, by Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5. Hi, Kev. How are you?
Hi, Sean. It's good to talk to you. And by the way, we are officially doing an episode after a bunch of news is broken.
Yes.
Thank you.
I can't tell you guys how excited Gabe is. Gabe is sitting in for Jake this week. Hi, Gabe. How are you?
I'm here. I'm on video. I'm live in person.
Yes, because Jake is taking a well-deserved vacation. And one of the jokes in the text chain is constantly how as soon as we record, all the biggest news of the week tends to hit. And yet this week we are jam-packed with outstanding stories to get to and really exciting things, including we can't even get to the fact that the Fast and the Furious franchise is ending. So go to Cinemablend and read about the fact that Fast and Furious is over. Housekeeping, if you're watching us on YouTube, hello, nice to see you guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoy watching the show, make sure you hit like and subscribe. That way you can tune in every single time that we have it. If you're listening to us, go over to the podcast, go over to the YouTube channel and give us a subscription. All of that information is in the show notes. Gabe is including that right there. We're going to jump right to the weekly poll because we have so much stuff going on that we really don't have any time to spare for this week's episode. And we want to get you to that Kid Detective interview because those two guys were awesome and that movie's great. But the weekly poll was called Who's Your Favorite Spider-Man? And we gave you four choices. We didn't even give you another because there aren't that many Spider-Man to choose from. We went with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, and Shameik Moore, who voiced Miles Morales in the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse animated feature. Gabe, because you are very often participating in the weekly poll. Oh, but you saw the results.
You did this last time I came in. I put this together.
I have not seen the results.
Okay, Kevin, let's go over to Kevin then. Which of the four, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, or Shameik Moore, do you think won the poll for who's your favorite Spider-Man?
Okay, so the reason we did this poll, obviously, is because of all the Spider-Man news that has been out there, and there's been a lot of news stories about the rejoining of Garfield and obviously Maguire and obviously with Holland. So I thought this was a cool idea for a poll. I think Tom Holland would no question crush this poll only because I think he is the best Spider-Man. And I think that from an MCU standpoint, he is generally loved by everybody. I don't know most people, I don't know that I've met anybody who doesn't like Tom Holland as Spider-Man.
You'll hear people argue, they'll say like, well, Andrew was great as Spider-Man and Tobey was great as Peter Parker, but Tom Holland gets both of them correct.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's kind of how I always felt about like Batman. Like with Bale, I always felt Bale was a great Bruce Wayne. I didn't necessarily love his Batman. That's why when I saw Ben Affleck play Batman for the first time, it was the perfect combination of both Bruce Wayne and Batman. So I'm going to say Holland won the poll. I'm going to say that Garfield is a close second.
Okay. Well, Garfield crushed.
What?
56 points.
No,
I'm sorry. Tom Holland crushed.
Okay.
56.5. Tobey came in second, 28.6. And then Andrew only got 9 and Shameik got 5.
Okay, so the reason why I believe it happened like that is Maguire did have better films. So I guess that makes sense. Yeah,
I mean, the Raimi films.
First Spidey, and Sean, I know you disagree with me. Actually, since Gabe's on today, I want to get Gabe's perspective because I am obsessed with Spider-Man 2. Everyone, I think Doc Ock. I love Alfred Molina. I think Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite Spider-Man films, next to Far From Home and Homecoming. Sean, as a Spider-Man fan, you don't love that film.
I have issues with it. It's still great, but I have issues with it.
And the key difference here is that Sean grew up a massive Spider-Man fan. I'm a Spider-Man fan from a cinema standpoint. Sean is a Spider-Man fan from a comic book standpoint. So, Gabe, is Spider-Man 2, am I crazy thinking that's one of the best Spider-Man movies?
I love it, but I was, when those came out, I was like at the right age. I was like a kid who was just like falling in love with superhero movies in general. So I have there's a big grain of salt in that I haven't seen it in years. So if I watched it now, maybe I'd have a bit of a critical eye to it. I've rewatched some scenes.
Yeah, I like you to.
It's so good.
I will, but I do know that I love Alfred Molina, and I can still point to like big set pieces.
That big circle thing in the middle of the water. I'll never forget like that big fight scene is
iconic moments
awesome.
that still stand out. So
I mean, the train sequence is phenomenal.
I thought
too.
for the poll,
really
a couple thoughts. You had mentioned one thing. I wonder if Tom Holland works in both of the sides of the coin of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Because he's so young. Like because he looks like a kid in high school. I always felt like he was just so much easier
old to me.
Yeah, always. But I was surprised that Shameik Moore only got 5% because Spider-Verse connected so well with the audience.
Right.
I thought that was really surprising.
I think Shameik Moore probably got less because he's physically not on screen, and you don't really think of Shameik Moore. I mean, the character. I mean, listen, the Into the Spider-Verse film was brilliant. We all loved it.
Yeah, his performance in particular is fantastic.
Right,
in it.
but you just don't think of Shameik Moore probably because you don't physically see his face.
Yeah.
But to your point about Tom Holland, Gabe, I think the moment that happened for fans was Civil War, because we had never seen, in my opinion, a very kid-like Spider-Man.
Right.
I had just never seen anybody have that heart and soul. And that's kind of, if you think about the Avengers Infinity War ending when Spidey gets dusted, that scene only works because of the kid charm that Tom Holland brought to the role.
Sure.
I don't think Maguire or Garfield's Spider-Man would have earned that type of arc because I never really considered them kids, if that makes sense. Like they were always like it's strange. Holland, and again, this is coming from somebody who did not read the comics growing up, but I just have a general sense of who Spider-Man is. Holland just fits the description of who I think Spider-Man is.
Well, and in both instances, they very quickly rushed him out of high school. Like Andrew Garfield graduates at the beginning of Amazing Spider-Man 2. So he has essentially one movie as a high school kid. Toby's working for the Daily Bugle like almost the minute. I think he's in high school in the first one, but then he's moved on very quickly. They lean into the youth for sure in the Marvel
me, Andrew Garfield hits he's more of a charming Peter Parker. Tobey Maguire is more of an average Joe Peter Parker, but Tom Holland is the like youthful innocence Peter Parker.
Wait till they get Tom Holland to deal with a loss. Like every Spider-Man has to have a significant emotional loss. And Holland's a good actor, so I really want to see.
We got Iron Man. He was good with that.
No, he was good with it, but I mean like something that hits it like home that really resonates. Yeah. I'll be looking forward to.
I don't know that I want to see that, Sean. I love the characters.
I want to see him suffer.
I want to give a shout out, by the way, to Tom Holland because I think that over these years, with the Spider-Man characters become obviously what everyone knows him for. But you go back to like the kid is one of the greatest dramatic actors working today.
The Impossible.
The Impossible is brilliant. If you haven't seen The Impossible, it's directed by one of Sean's favorite filmmakers, J.A. Bayona. Bayona?
Yeah,
am I pronouncing that right? Mm-hmm. Who did Jurassic, the second Jurassic
Okay, but don't say that's what he did because that's the worst movie he made.
I'm only mentioning that because people would know
People should see The Orphanage and they should see The Impossible, which are two of his best films. And then, of course, A Monster Calls, which is...
That's the one.
Fantastic.
Oh, my God. Incredible.
But to give Tom Holland credit, we all recently discussed The Devil All the Time, which is this new Netflix film with him and Robert Pattinson, which I think was a really risky move for him in a good way, because when you're Tom Holland, when you're MCU Spidey, to take on a role that dark, and I sometimes wonder, like, and I give him a lot of credit for it because he could have been like, you know what, I don't know if my young fans are ready to see me dive that deep and that dark, especially with how disturbing that film ends up becoming. What I found it really weird when that film was released, the weekend it came out, when he was Instagramming to his fans. He has like, over almost 30 or 40 million Instagram followers. Wow. Think about how young his fan base is. Yeah. So you have like 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids who are like, what's The Devil All the Time? Oh, I'll pop on Netflix.
Is kind of interesting.
You have to think about that from a perspective of
it's
of
like
an artist.
Daniel Radcliffe. But Radcliffe did it after his Harry Potter run.
And he did it like he waited a long time and then he sort of like gradually did it.
Yeah. It'd be like if you recommended Swiss Army Man in between like Harry Potter 4 and 5.
It's almost like Holland was like, you know what, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off now. I'm going to show you that I am a serious dramatic actor. I'm more than Spider-Man. But I have to give him credit for taking a risk like that.
Wait till Cherry comes around. right?
Jared, and that's another great example. A $20 million Russo brothers film based on a book. It's going to be raw. It sounds like it's very raw, very intense. I love that the Russos are going back to low budget. I just really think Tom Holland's one of the best actors working today. I think he's bigger and better than just Spider-Man.
We're not going to get Cherry till next year, though, right?
April.
Oh,
wait,
man.
Wait, is it April or February? No, it's February. Someone double check that.
Yeah.
Here's what.
I know they pushed it back. I think you're right. It's February. I think
what they did was they moved it to February so that it could still compete within this year's Oscars.
Okay.
I believe.
That makes sense. All right. Speaking of movies that go dark in a way that you don't expect them to, The Kid Detective, honestly, the show cannot recommend this enough. We've all now had a chance to see it. It's one of those films that sounded intriguing at the premise. But again, Kevin, I swear, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, dude, you got to check out this movie called The Kid Detective. He was like, ew, gross. What is that, like Spy Kids?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's not. It's the title is really a hang-up.
I told you guys that was going to be a thing.
So it stars Adam Brody as a one-time popular kid detective, an Encyclopedia Brown type character who's now grown. And it's a film noir gumshoe detective movie in the lines of, we were using Rian Johnson's Brick, or The Nice Guys as talking point. Chinatown, even, like, it's not that far off to say that this is where this movie aspires to be. And so we got a chance to sit down with Adam Brody, the star of it, and his director, Evan Morgan, to talk about where the idea came from and all the different places that they took it. So without further ado, the interview with the cast and crew of The Kid Detective here on ReelBlend. We love it so much, dude. We've been texting each other nonstop since watching it. And it's everything that we were needing right now. We're all huge Gumshoe fans, and we just love, and so I got to start right here. I'm sure it's super obvious. I'm sorry if you've been hit with this before, but the influence of the Encyclopedia Brown stories and books, and who was the fan of those, that book and that character in that world? Was it both of you guys? Was it Mr. Morgan? Was it you? Where did it come from? How did that influence it?
It's funny. I don't think it was really either of us. I know Adam. I don't even know.
Certainly it wasn't me. No.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't even know who Encyclopedia Brown was. I don't think.
Not really. I mean, you get the archetype and you get the idea, but Scooby-Doo is as close as I ever got.
When I was a kid, like, I don't know when the Encyclopedia Brown books were published. They weren't like so much a part of my childhood. I used to read these books by this guy, Eric Wilson, who's like a Canadian mystery writer, and he used to do like detective stories. Those were my equivalent. And I think I maybe read like a Hardy Boy or two. I don't know. But I just really liked the idea of this character. And so after like I committed to write the script, I bought all of the Encyclopedia Browns and like read them all. And
oh my God.
And just sponged it all in. And like, it is more than any of the other like kid detective, iconic kid detectives, Encyclopedia Brown for sure was the inspiration in terms of like the age of the kid detective, the backdrop of the town, the types of mysteries that he's solving.
Right down to the police chief, like having to rely on him kind of thing. And almost being like, how embarrassing would it be if I brought you in to help with this murder case?
Well, my original dream, I would have loved for this to have been like an actual Encyclopedia Brown movie where like, he's in his early 30s and we actually got to use the name. But it was, this was a spec script, and it just began with me and Adam like having a conversation and me kind of pitching the idea to him.
My college band, I kid you not, was named Bugs Meany. And it was really just us sitting around trying to brainstorm things from our childhood. And my friend was like, who was the villain from the Encyclopedia Brown books? And I was like, oh, his name was Bugs Meany. And as soon as we said it out loud, it stuck. And so when I'm watching Adam get his ass beat outside of a bar, I was like, I feel a little bit bad about this.
Yeah, that name is great. That made a big impression on me too when I was reading it. Like, this is going to be the town bully. He's like always the suspect, and they give him the last name Meany. And it's so in your face. It's so beautiful. And I kind of was hoping to recreate something like that with like the world in our film.
You did.
We love this film. We've been texting about it on our text chain for our podcast, and we just love the performances, the style of it, the way it's shot, the score is incredible. I'm interested. This is something this might be a strange thing to bring up, but the shoes, the Chuck Taylors that your character wears, it's a pretty prominent aspect to who he is. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to notice, but I personally love Chuck Taylor, so I noticed them specifically, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of giving him like a kid's heart. A little bit, like, and I'm just curious for each of you what your perspective is on something as minor as a shoe choice. I mean, I feel like the Chuck Taylors really do something important to the character, I think.
It's huge, and in fact, it's funny because we were Evan always had an idea what he would look like, but in the script, like maybe he's got his hat too. I always thought that hat might be a little tricky to pull off, but a fedora. But we had tried to make this movie and been talking about this movie for like 6-7 years, and for 4 of them literally trying to get it financed with a completed script. And then it wasn't until like we were going to shoot in like 2 weeks, we're like, well, what does he look like? Like, what the fuck is he going to wear? And all of a sudden you're faced with like, you're filming really soon. The costume, you just hired a costumer, you have no budget. And so, okay. And it was a scramble. And I know that it was, we were very much, there was either like he could wear. So the look was very important. It's iconic. Yeah. It's an iconic character. It's an iconic archetype, and the look was a very, very, very important. And we went back and forth a lot. Evan always had the idea of the tweed jacket. I think we kind of came up with the pen. He's got like a pen in his pocket, and then other than that, I was for a minute. I was pitching. I'm like, I don't know. Is he like? Does he have a full suit? Is he like Gene Hackman in The Conversation? I mean, is it a raincoat? Like.
Yeah, and, a Columbo look.
Yeah, is that too much? But the Converse was an easy choice because A, they're easy to get and to clear, but also they give you that 50s, they transport you right to the 50s, right to Boyhood, right to Boyhood Americana, Stand By Me. It's a classic look. They look great too. They're just very cinematic shoes. And then the last piece of the puzzle that Evan and I did, and it was in some ways the most important for the look, was we had made a decision last moment about the bruising, and because he gets beat up in the middle, and how long is that going to last? He's going to wake up with it, but we could kind of have it fade and make it between then and his first case, the first act, that could be a couple weeks, or we could just kind of roll right into it. And we decided, somewhat in a nod to Chinatown, but even more so just in a nod to reality, and also because the look is great, to keep that on the whole time. Yeah. And that was invaluable. I mean, we were both really happy we finally did that. And that felt like, oh, that completes the look. That's the character.
Yeah, there's something just beautiful about hearing the score, that jazz almost score, watching him just walk around. Like I want to see him just walk around and do more cases. I would watch an anthology series of this. It'd be so cool.
I can't think of a detective movie that I've loved where the main protagonist is not beat up to a certain extent, too.
Yeah, sure.
It's such an important element of it.
It is
100%. We dispense with it in the first 3 minutes of the movie.
So you go into a project like this, you hear the concept, you hear like the kid detective, you assume it's going to be comedic and a bit of a spoof. What I want to give you guys the most credit for is that you have an actual case, with significant layers. And the movie could go one way or the other. I'm curious, when you get to the point writing the script where you're like, okay, but we need like a legitimate case that has, multiple suspicious characters and clues that can legitimately follow to keep the audience hooked. Where did the idea of the actual case come from?
Well, the case came inconveniently later than the character for me. I had the idea for the character, and that really got me excited. And I think I drafted like the first act of the movie pretty quickly, like within a week or 2 weeks or something like that, and had it to share with Adam pretty quickly. Just because I got really excited about the character and like imagining, this formerly celebrated kid detective, now he's in his early mid-30s and nobody cares anymore. No one's impressed. Like there was a lot to juice out of that instantly in terms of his relationship with the town and the way that the town has changed.
His parents.
Yeah, exactly. And with respect to the actual crime story, I was intimidated because not only had I not written one before, but I'm also not a junkie for it. I also hadn't read many. I hadn't, gone and it was not a genre that I was ever particularly interested in more than other genres. And so the first thing I did was really just to try and consume as much as I could in terms of looking at older films and reading like classic books. The Raymond Chandler books were my favorite. They're insanely funny. Like just like laugh out loud funny.
Are they?
Some of the crazy.
On purpose?
Crazy. On purpose. Yeah. Like here's a little thing. Like I remember a passage where I think it's in The Big Sleep, and he's saying, she was giving me a look I could feel in my hip pocket.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect.
That's just a little nugget, but like there's so much funnier stuff. Because I was consuming that, I was thinking originally, oh, maybe this character is invited out of his small town and like goes to Los Angeles and has to solve like a high stakes murder investigation with like a movie star or something like that, you know, trying to push it into the most classic place possible. And I remember like right after Adam had reviewed the first act, we were on the phone talking about it, and he was just like, no, you know what? I think like you should keep it in the town. Like that's where the world is.
Yeah.
You know, that's the movie. And so then I kind of threw out everything that I had, like all the sort of speculative plot notes that I'd written. I threw them away and tried to come up with something that that could feel like a large scale mystery, but set in this small community.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny. I actually want to go to Hepburn's now. Like, I mean, that's how like ingrained this world was. This is, I mean, and going off what Sean said real quick, I just want to tell you, I mean, like the tone is kind of what made this movie great, in my opinion. It was like this sharp-edged tone where you had goofy elements, but you had actual stakes. And I think that's kind of where it really combines, in my personal opinion. One of the things I love about this film, there's a line in the film, Adam, that you say, where you say it's difficult to accept the difference between who you are in your head and who you are to the world. And that just kind of like struck me, because I feel like we all deal with that balance. And Adam, for you specifically, you're an actor, so everyone in the world has watched your work and they have a certain perception of who you are based on the work you've done. And then you have the perception of who you are, obviously, as the person you are. Can you talk about that line, and specifically whether or not like you have that personal battle sometimes where you think about how people perceive me versus how I see the world?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's such a universal concept, as you said, that it struck you, that, you know, and also just the kind of whoever you are and whatever happens in your life, the humbling nature of getting older and becoming an adult. And, you know, I'm sure for everyone, there's dreams unfulfilled. And for me, you know, yeah, I had success in my early 20s. And while I never felt hindered by that, only helped, it only gave me a world of opportunity, I still had to grapple with the reality that, like, I think I had more opportunity at 23 than 33, you know, and swallow that. Not that I ever thought my best days were behind me. I never did, nor do I now. But you know, that's a humbling experience. And so, yeah, I think it's such a universal idea, though, that everyone can relate in a way.
100%.
There's the challenge in this film that I definitely want you guys to discuss, in that it gets very serious and it gets very dark. It treats the entire universe that you've created really seriously, but you're not afraid to lean into some surreal stuff to find laughs. The one sequence in particular, and I don't want to give too much of it away, but it's your character hiding in the closet for a long period of time. I was just laughing out loud the more it went. So what, you know, again, without spoilers, can you just talk about like your approach to the comedic elements of this, so that they didn't like overwhelm the tone or tip it one way in the other direction? And if you could talk about that sequence without sort of giving it away, like how long did you know to stay in it, and where you could allow the character to go, because it's really brilliant.
Yeah, Adam's facial expressions are perfect as he's like looking at the computer. Like, oh God, come on! It's so good.
It's incredible closet acting. I don't think I've ever seen closet acting that's as great as that. That tells as much of the story.
Brad Pitt in Burn After Reading has there not been a closet performance that good.
Well, I would have gone Halloween, little Jamie Lee Curtis.
That's
maybe.
a good one. That's a good one.
Our producer Will actually turned to me like in one of the late stages of editing, and was just like, man, Adam's really good in this closet sequence. He was just really struck by it specifically. But yeah, as far as like the humor, I think like, okay, so because the story like begins, you know, let's skip the first 5 minutes. It begins in the past, in the flashback sequence, and we're presented with a town that we recognize. We know it from Encyclopedia Brown, Nancy Drew, like, 60s sitcoms or 50s sitcoms or whatever. This kind of like perfect utopic, like suburban setting. And that's allowed to be super exaggerated. By the time we wake up with him in the present, we've just kind of like, we've turned it upside down in a way. It's the darker version. It's like the shadow version of that community, what happened to that community after it lost its innocence. And it's still just as idiosyncratic. Like, that's built into the fabric already. And so people understand what is, that the rules of this universe are not the rules of our universe, but there's still a limit to what we can and can't get away with. And I think like really the trick was just keeping it within that space where, we don't do anything super outrageous. He doesn't fall off a building and then like dust himself off. Like, it's all proportionate to the sort of the world that was suggested in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
What I love about this film as I watched it was the sequence earlier on where we see Adam, your character's younger kid, he's watching the movies with his parents. He's like, oh, that's the bad guy. That's the twist coming up at the end. That was the moment for me as an audience member where I locked in and I became the detective as an audience member watching your film. I'm like, I wonder if I can pick out who the bad guy is or figure out where the twist is coming. And I think like that was a really immersive tool that just kind of hit me as an audience member. I don't know if this is a loaded question to ask, but do each of you know a film that you saw in your life where you saw a twist coming that like has a gigantic twist people talk about, like, oh, I didn't see that coming? Is there a one that you saw coming that you remember? Like a certain twist that you can go, oh, I saw that one coming, like The Sixth Sense or something like that.
Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Well,
because the picture at the beginning that Michael Keaton has at the construction site.
Oh, so you knew that he was going to be the father?
Yeah.
Oh, that was one of the biggest reveals. I did not see that.
I was surprised. I didn't
That
see
caught
it
me
coming.
off guard. It pretty much caught me off guard. Nice job. Well done.
That's a good one. Like, anybody who says they saw Sixth Sense coming is not telling the truth. There's no way. Adam, do you have one?
I didn't know. I can't think of any. I can think of some great twists, but none that I...
What are some of your favorite twists?
Well, I mean, just a great twist. I mean, obviously, Usual Suspects is like, everyone talks about that. Honestly, the What Lies Beneath was very impactful.
Yes!
That's a great one.
That was a big, that was that whole movie was the twist.
Zemeckis.
Certainly The Sixth Sense is like maybe up there for all-time famous twists. And gosh, are there any more? I guess Primal Fear.
That's a huge one. Yeah.
Dude, when Edward Norton. Oh, my God.
By the way, we're ruining all these movies for people who haven't.
Very clearly also the most famous example of twist.
I can guarantee people will not figure out what's going on in your movie.
No, because I didn't. I had no. That. Oh my God, that scene was amazing. But we'll digress on that later.
It's so good. I have to ask about elements that you include in the story that don't pan out and don't feel like they're going anywhere. You listen to them and you assume that they're like things like the Red Shoe Gang, some recurring gag about demon worshippers. Like, where are all these things? Are they just ingredients peppered in to add color to his universe?
Let me just add before it jumps in too. There's a whole super funny sequence that's a good 10 minutes that's cut out that also leads nowhere. But the way when I wake up in the dumpster, there's a whole other way I got there that's very elaborate. And
can you tell us, since it's not in the movie? Because the way you walk out of that door and wait for it to close made me so happy. It was a great scene.
I will tell you. I'll do it super fast. So in the scene where I meet the parents of the boy who was killed, they have their niece staying with them. She's cut out of that scene, but she comes in and serves, like, brings us drinks, and she lives in the city. I'm like, oh, my band has a show there this week. Anyways, later on,
she's
I'm at
of
my
age.
lowest.
It's important to
yes. She's of age. Okay. An adult niece.
Okay.
I'm playing the show. There's like a concert, it's just a song, but
You're in a band? You're in a band?
Yeah. I'm playing the show.
Remember he plays drums with that band?
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm playing drums on stage with the band, and no one's really paying attention, but in this club, her and her friends come in. We say hi. I talk at the bar for a bit with them. We go back to their place. We're partying. I'm doing ego boosters, and I'm kind of I'm getting like really high. I go outside to the balcony. I have a depressed moment. I kind of a reflective moment. We start kissing. Cuts to the morning, and I'm asleep, but I'm just like I OD'd or something. They can't wake me. They all wake up. There's 3 of them. They're all speaking Chinese, and they can't wake me up. And they think I'm dead, and they're slapping me. I'm naked. They're slapping me. They can't get me up, so they carry me up, pick me up naked, and they come out, and they're in their like lingerie, and they carry me down the hallway to the garbage chute and slide me in the garbage chute. And that's actually the story of how I ended up.
Was that filmed?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's really funny. I mean, it works. It's just that it seemed, and Evan can illuminate this more than I can, but it just seemed like to take another 10 minutes that didn't lead you to the story at all was a bridge too far in the tension and the propulsion of the story. But it really worked on its own. It's one of the funnier. Unfortunately, it might be the funniest sequence in the movie.
It is the funniest sequence, in the movie, and it's not in the movie.
Does that kill you to remove it? Does that hurt?
Yeah. How do you
It
deal
took a while
with that?
for me to realize that that's what we had to do. And
But
I'll tell you, our producer Will. I mean, this guy. From the beginning, from the first moment before I even determined to work with them, he was like, "You got to cut that sequence in the city." I was like, "You're crazy, man!" Like everyone who reads the script thinks that that's the best sequence. That's the one that they're the most excited about.
Yeah.
At every turn, he's like, "Oh, we're the budget's super tight. Like, be great if we could eliminate a day. Like, maybe he doesn't have to go to the city and do all this stuff." And I was like, "No way!" Like, this from my cold dead hands will you be like prying this away from me? But then ultimately I came around, and it's exactly what Adam said, where it's like the structure of the movie, we are presenting often people with things, like dangling things in front of them that seem like they're going to be lucrative, like seem like they're going to be legitimate leads. And then it turns into, nothing.
Were the Red Shoe Gang ever part of it? Did we ever get to...
There was a time when I was writing, when I was thinking like maybe there would be a whole other section where like the Red Shoe Gang kind of retaliates because Adam is like prying into their business and throw him out of a window. So there actually was a version where he does fall off a building, and but no, like it didn't last long. And I think it was just sort of testing the strands a little bit on, I honestly would have loved to make this movie like 2.5 hours, but it just wasn't going to work. And
well, Evan, you could always release the Morgan cut. You could release the Morgan cut.
Right. Yeah. I will say, like, the shorter version is the better version. Like I come to terms with
the version's tremendous. Yeah, the version's tremendous.
But
Kev, wrap us up. Okay, you want to get out on more?
What was I forget where I was heading with this. It was okay. You were asking, about the things that were not followed up on by the movie. And I think, like, with respect to the demon worshiper, all that stuff, it's really just, again, it's what does this community look like 20 years after this kid gets abducted? How, the whimsy has been sucked out of this place. And now these kids who used to be like happily like sipping their soda pops are sacrificing cats, like that's really what it's there for, is to create a sense of the landscape. And so, and if this had been a series, I'm sure we would have delved into all that stuff and it would have been fun. But
at one point they served breakfast for dinner and dinner for breakfast. That's
right.
I love that line. That line cracked me up.
I'm a sucker for diner shots. What was it called? Like Joe's or whatever it was. Like just like the shot outside of the diner. Yeah, I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Oaks.
Oaks. Yeah. Adam, this is a different direction, but my wife and I are obsessed with Jennifer's Body. And my wife, right before I walked down here just now, she's like, "Make sure you tell Adam Brody how much we love that film." And I can't. It came out in 2009. I know it's an older movie, but what was your experience with that film? I just love you in that movie, and I think it's a very great film.
Yeah, I haven't revisited it in years, but thrilled to do it. Loved doing it at the time. My experience was, and I knew some of the people involved previously, had a great time doing it. Saw an early cut and was like, holy shit, this movie's amazing. And it looks incredible. I just thought Karan Kusama too. I was like, it looks iconic. And then I saw a little bit later the marketing materials and I was like, oh, you don't get it at all. And, imagine, there's a million ways I could rip up the marketing materials, but just imagine a world where like Diablo Cody wins a fucking Oscar for screenplay the year before. Like, she's kind of a household name in film circles.
100%.
Now, famous, you have this like feminist leaning movie and they think it's not relevant to mention her at all. Let's keep her no, let's bury that name. And it's very much it's not like she got hired to write this thing. Like that's what she wanted to write next and did. And it's very much her voice. And to go like, no. This isn't for fans of Juno. This isn't for fans of Diablo Cody. This is for fucking fans of Transformers and Michael Bay heads and like Michael, and then did a shitty job in that regard too. But anyways, that's just one example of like, and so that said, I'm happy it's gotten this huge sort of revival in the last year or two, and maybe some ways it's better, like this is cool too. I'm happy it certainly has found its audience now, and in some ways that's even cooler. So
it's an awesome movie.
I want to get you guys out of here on this one before we run out of time. One of the talking points for this film is just how long you guys workshopped it and how long you stayed with the concept. That seems really out of the ordinary. Is that something totally different? Like something unusual to have to stay with a project that long, to develop it that long?
I hope. I mean, this took an eternity. It's true. And, had I known how long it would take, well, I mean, I'm glad I didn't. But now that we're here, it's like, well, it's all paid off. Like, we ended up getting to make this movie exactly the way we wanted. We didn't have to make any concessions regarding like the script or,
the cast.
or really anything. Like, the cast that we assembled was just note perfect, and the crew was unreal. Like it couldn't have turned out better. With this, it was just, a lot of things didn't work out earlier where we thought we were close. We thought we had a good lead, and then something would give way and, the whole thing would crumble. And so in the 4 years that we were trying to finance it, it got a bit tough. It got a bit, it wore on us for sure. And as Adam will attest, like we didn't have a ton of time left, but to get it greenlit. Do you want to hop in on that?
No, that's it. Well, yeah. It was a long time knocking on doors for indie film. I've done it a lot, and it's so boring. It's exciting for about 10 minutes. I love pitching something I believe in, and I wouldn't pitch anything that I didn't. But indie film, it's just like, it's so random. So many people you're meeting either don't have money or aren't even in the business. So you're like trying to tell them your artistic vision, and they're coming from, the stock market or I don't know, something else. And just so many dead ends. And I just hate it. So I started to really lose faith. I started to pitch Evan strongly on like, let's pitch it as a show. Let's cut this up. It'll be 6 episodes the first season. And at least then I can get us in like 10 rooms with people with money. I don't know if they'll buy it or not, but we can like do some stuff and get some answers. And Evan doggedly kept the faith. And I couldn't believe, just let alone talking to you guys now, I couldn't believe we were on set finally. Like it was happening. It was reality. It was dream come true, truly.
Yeah. Well, we'll tell you, we all love this film, and we're not saying that because we're talking to you. We genuinely had such an excitement for it. It was something fresh. It was new. Adam, your performance is brilliant. And I won't give away what happens, but your final shot and scene is so perfect. Like it's like the emotion of that. I mean, I would love to ask you about that.
Did you film that? Can you tell us if you filmed that final shot early or late?
No, late. It was weighing on me the whole time. And I don't know. I guess what can I?
I know it's hard to give away the details.
Could we just hold that part? And I would love to hear that.
Sure.
Yeah,
it's so great. I hope you guys are able to, if you ever want to, continue stories with this character because it's truly fantastic. I would love to see a franchise of it. Yeah, it's up to him, I'm sure. So thank you so much for coming on the show, man. We really appreciate it. We're going to tell everybody about the movie and spread the word as long as we can.
That's awesome. So, yeah, we appreciate that.
Thanks a lot.
This was a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
I hope you guys are staying safe, and congratulations. Seriously, we really mean what we said.
That feels really good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Have a great day, guys.
Take it easy, guys.
See ya. Be well, guys. See ya.
Thank you very much to Sony for giving us time with Adam Brody and Evan Morgan. Gabe, I want to talk to you first because you just caught up with this movie. Were you surprised? Did we oversell it? Did you dig it?
Not at all. I was still there were still plenty of surprises as far as like exactly when you talk about a movie having like a mixture of tones. I think there's always a bit of uncertainty of like how it's going to pull that off and how far it's going to go with each given tone. But I also loved it. I really dug it. I think it builds. I texted you guys this last night. I think it builds a really interesting world that feels original but familiar, that like you can kind of, it's not that you feel the hits coming, but when they come, they're exciting. I think the characters are great. I think that the Adam Brody character in particular, it's one of those premises that's it's just enough of a turn that it's again original but familiar, where he's this kid detective grown up and kind of dealing with still being technically a kid detective and not really promoting himself beyond that. So yeah, I'm a big fan, and I recommend it to anyone who can see it.
So
sure.
yeah, that's the thing. You can see it. It's in 800 theaters right now. The reason why we're doing a quick review of it is technically it came out last week. And we don't know the VOD strategy on it. Sony wants it to come to theaters. And so, if you can get to it, it's definitely something worth checking out.
It's like 800 theaters, and I believe that's globally. So it's really not a lot.
Okay.
But even if you wait and you have to wait to VOD, whatever the case might be, it's worth the purchase.
Sorry,
or the rent.
No. I just had a question for Gabe, just out of curiosity. So Gabe, you went to a movie theater to see the film.
Yeah.
So there was I wanted to ask you about that, because here's what I want to ask you, because I haven't been to a movie theater in a while. I saw Tenet 4 times, but I haven't been back since Tenet. And obviously, movie theaters have to be a little bit different from that point, because nothing really big and new has come out really since Tenet.
Sure.
How was the theater? Like, was it empty? Was your experience different from Tenet?
Yeah, I can get that. So one, I will mention, as we should mention, the reason I went to see it is because the interview had some spoilery sections in it, which we're gonna put up on the YouTube clips page. Which
Gabe risked his life to not
really
get spoiled.
It's just, you guys sold it so well. I was like, all right, I'll go. I'll mask up and I'll go. It was pretty much the same. It seemed like when I went for Tenet, things weren't as finalized in the sense of like official signage and like procedures that felt like they were like thoroughly grooved out. But when I went this time, I went to the same theater that I went to for Tenet. And they just had more kind of ropes up. They had sort of more clear signage about where to go, what you can do. They had updated the ticketing so that if you bought your tickets online, you didn't even have to print them off. You didn't have to touch anything. You could just show them your phone. And
did the guy hold your phone like he did for me? Because the guy took my phone.
They had a plexiglass thing, and I held it up.
I was only.
They're still selling concessions, which to me is still a backwards concept given everything. But
I was just curious. Well, this is one of the things that we were actually discussing on the show, or maybe off the show, was why some of these films are still going to theaters exclusively. Like, there's a film opening up. Right.
It's a weird thing, yeah.
There's a movie opening this Friday called After We Collided, which we've discussed on the show before. My wife Lauren is really into the series. They're doing a simultaneous theatrical and on-demand release. And to me, at this point in time where we are in the world with the virus and everything, that seems very reasonable to me from a perspective of doing that.
Sure.
But you have these really weird scattered films that are still only going theatrical. I think the Kajillionaire went theatrical. This movie, War with Grandpa. Why do you think some of these studios didn't do the same release as a VOD?
I had a theory for some of them. There are some that you look at that that sort of feel like they're movies that the studio's trying to like literally throw away, like stuff that would just be sitting on a shelf. Or there's a movie coming out this week, I think, that Disney acquired in the Fox deal that's coming out that they released a trailer for.
The
they released a trailer. Which we'll sort of discuss later. But that they released a trailer for last week, and then they're dropping it in theaters. And it's like, well, clearly you're not interested. You're just trying to get this. You're just trying to cross this off.
I mean, sometimes it's contractual. Sometimes it's in the contract that you're obligated to give them a theatrical release. And
like the Broken Hearts Gallery. Why did that have to open in theaters?
I don't know. I mean, sorry, Sean. I'd be curious. I'd be curious to hear from people that are making that decisions if there is a strategy, or if it's like Sean saying, if it's just contractual and they can't.
The other thing I wanted to throw out there though too is how quickly people have come adjusted to just can I stream that? Like whenever I mention anything. Yeah. They're always like, okay, cool. Can I stream that this weekend? Like people are automatically now trained that whatever new is coming should be available on one of these multiple services that they subscribe to. And I hate that this is going to happen. And I'm sure that once we get a big movie that's in theaters, that will be the one that lures everybody back. But the longer that we are at home and the longer that we're getting used to getting first run stuff right in front of us, it's going to be harder to lure back that casual audience that went to 2 movies a year, 3 movies a year. That I don't know if you're going to get them back.
See, I disagree, because I think the people that went to see 2 or 3 movies a year were seeing Marvel movies. Okay. And Marvel movies aren't going anywhere. Marvel movies are, I think, as long as the theater physical structure exists, I think that cash cow is going to keep on rolling kind of thing. Yeah. So Yes and no. I could see that, and I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't.
You think
necessarily...
they go to Eternals or Shang-Chi or something like that?
I don't know. I feel like Marvel's gotten to a point where if they put their name on it, and two, just how many lessons they have in marketing and how they have that down. I think now you put Marvel on it, you just say that Doctor Strange is going to show up in it maybe for a scene, like
throw someone in.
I think that's the thing. I think there's definitely a market that could suffer, and we see a lot of things that you see just like without even any sort of hesitation getting thrown on streaming are comedies. And so like I could see comedies having a really hard time getting a true theatrical release, which in my opinion is a great theatrical experience when you're laughing with a group. So I could see certain genres and things sort of getting hit. But I think that when you talk about people who don't go that often and maybe they won't never go, maybe that's going to happen. But I think those people are going to go see the movies that are coming anyway.
Yeah. So to Sean's point, I think what Sean is saying is about our brains are being trained a certain way now, right? We're thinking differently. So I had an experience the other day that was kind of an awakening moment for me in a weird way. So over the weekend, I interviewed Kevin Costner and Diane Lane for this movie called Let 'Em Go.
Ma and Pa Kent?
Yeah, Ma and Pa Kent. And so what the screener comes to my email, I watch it Saturday morning, I come downstairs in my basement, I do the interviews, and I'm home. And I went back upstairs and looked to Lauren, because that would have been a trip to LA. I would have gone to LA, I would have landed, I would have been there for 19 hours, I would have saw the film, did the interviews the next morning, and then flew home.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, and I know this is a different situation than someone just going to a movie or just streaming it, but my brain is now trained to think like that. Now I'm looking at films and going, all right, which ones are worth flying out for? Which ones are not? Is that one worth doing? If I can just talk to Kevin Costner on my computer for 4 minutes. Right. And I want to be in person with these actors, but to Sean's point about our brains changing, there's a shift. 100% a shift. Yep. And I think like it's going to come down to major event films, and we're going to have to shorten these windows. That's what we're going to have to do. And I think
when you're seeing, was it Amazon who paid $125 for Coming to America? $125 million? Like that shows me that the streaming services, they're not getting out of this game. You know, they're just buying more into it and picking up bigger projects. And man, it's going to be fascinating to track over the next couple of months. I want to shift to the next topic because this is a movie that we are extremely fired up for, but I want to ask you guys whether you think they're going to get over the hump to get general audiences excited for.
I had the same thought. That's funny.
This is David Fincher's film, Mank. And again, okay, right there, I'm sold. It's David Fincher's film. So I'm going. Then you tell me it's about the making of Citizen Kane. Okay, great. Even more so, I'm in. But it's a black and white Netflix film, and what it reminds me of all of a sudden, because the new trailer for it dropped, and I think it looks fantastic, and I think it's going to be an amazing film. But I'm looking over Gabe's shoulder, and I see Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, and I'm thinking about Scorsese's Irishman, and I just wonder if this is going to be a movie that's going to be able to break through and appeal to people who aren't quote unquote, film buffs who want to see Gary Oldman playing Herman Mankiewicz.
Yeah.
So what are your guys' thoughts on this?
I'll tell you, I have the exact answer because I had this happen to me today at work. So generally speaking, I work for a morning show in DC, and when a big trailer comes out for a film, like an Avengers Endgame or an Avengers movie, or even Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, the movie we're going to be getting to in our show in a little bit because it's Chadwick Boseman's final film performance. When these trailers come out, I have a thing that clicks in my mind and goes, all right, you know what? We got to get that trailer on the air immediately. This is a big deal. Fans are going to be excited about this. We want to show our viewers the new trailers that have come out because not everybody's in tune with online and Twitter like we are. They don't see the tweets and the movies trailers come out like we do. When Mank came out this morning, it came out within a reasonable time of my morning show. I could have easily cut it and got it on my air. I didn't think it was right. I didn't think it was a movie that my audience I didn't think it was a film that was going to excite local morning television. Right. And I thought to myself about that, and that's the exact question that you're asking, Sean, is that does this movie have a general audience built into it, or is it for film nerds? And I'm not saying general audiences can't be film nerds.
No,
but that I did make a decision this morning in my mind that I was like, you know what? I don't know if this is. Do I need to do a segment on Mank? I'll do a segment on this trailer or that trailer, but Mank didn't seem like a movie I wanted to do a segment on. But for me, I can't wait to see it. I'm excited about it.
I'll even go one step further. This is what's killing some of these movies to this extent. If David Fincher's Mank was coming to your art house theater and you made a night of it to go like, all right, we're going to go check it out. Reviews have been solid. It's David Fincher. Hey, I like his movies. Let's get dinner and we're going to go see Mank. And then you're in it. You're there. You're going to watch it. But on a streaming service, people put on the first 5 or 10 minutes and then they're on their phone or something else happens and they turn it off and they never go back to it. How many people did you guys hear from Roma, who are like, oh yeah, I watched like 15, 20 minutes of it. I couldn't get into it.
And Roma's a very slow, quiet movie too. Yeah, for
sure. And so, I mean, that's a danger for a movie like this too.
It'll be interesting. I mean, it's on Netflix, and everyone's stuck at home. So there's the chance that, it hits. And if I think Fincher has enough of a filmography to excite people, if they're, if it's the general audience that maybe doesn't know exactly what he's done, if they're presented with what he has done in those titles, maybe that works for them. One thing though, that I think is interesting that I just don't know that it's going to connect with that audience is it's not just that it's a movie about movie making and it's shot in black and white. It's very much, from what I gathered from the trailer, shot like a movie was shot in the 1930s. Like the way that the edits are working.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. The way, and it's just the trailer. Maybe they mix some stuff up, but even the camera movements, I think it still works, and I trust Fincher to, still make an entertaining film. I don't think he's ever made a film that wasn't entertaining, but I'm curious how much of that will just sort of reduce it down to the very sort of fanatic level film buffs. But
it's an interesting thing because like that's where, because I'm an entertainment reporter in the DC area, and and you have to have these conversations with yourself about what you think is important to you and what you think is important to the audience, right? And like Fincher's Mank is like Christmas for me, right? It's David Fincher, it's Citizen Kane, it's Oldman, but there's no way I'm not thinking in my mind, I don't think general audiences care, because Citizen Kane
breaks my heart.
Citizen Kane came out in 1941. It's 79 years old. Yeah. And I listen, David Fincher, Fight Club 7, he's Gone Girl, he's made very big films. I just don't see somebody like on a Saturday night going, I'm going to put on a black and white movie about the making of Citizen Kane. And it's a tough sell, but that's where our jobs become important.
Yeah.
Right? Because I feel like the what we do for a living is try to excite people about movies and things. So to be honest with you, I probably should do a segment on Mank because to me, I find it interesting. But I just feel like it's a hard sell. It is a very tough sell.
What about Trial of Chicago 7? Did that play at all?
I don't feel crazy buzz on that. Do you feel do you feel the buzz on that? I feel like that
I'm afraid
fell
it's because of
aside.
Netflix. I think the streaming giants have a really hard time. Because when something's in a movie theater, there's a window where you're paying attention to it. You're talking about the box office. You're talking about the reviews. There are stages that keep the film in the conversation.
Premieres, red carpets, interviews that go viral, or like,
I don't think that happens with a streaming service movie. I think it drops and you watch it or you don't, and it goes away.
But I will say,
it's an interesting.
We're kind of anticipating the negative or the bummer of like, man, people didn't appreciate a movie that we're all, I guess, assuming is going to be great. Yeah, it has no reason not to be.
We can't wait to see it.
Yeah, and we're kind of focusing on the negative of like, man, not enough people are going to see this, which is probably the case. Is probably what's going to happen. On the flip side of that, to kind of turn it into a positive, they're probably not expecting, 500 million people to see this.
Sure.
And so we can sort of be excited in the fact that we live in a world where David Fincher was given enough money to make an art house movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he probably didn't have to make any, he didn't have to cut himself short in any, compromise in any way. So like,
and Fincher's been on the ground with Netflix for a while. I mean, the House of Cards element. I mean, he's
Mindhunter.
I'm almost certain that Fincher or somebody in Fincher's camp is the one that developed the aspect ratio that you generally see on Netflix. Like there's like a certain aspect ratio that House of Cards has that I think was designed specifically for Netflix and streaming at home.
Like but shifting between TVs and mobile devices or something. I'm sure they did some,
I just find it fascinating because it's so weird. Like I this morning when that trailer came out, like I texted you guys immediately because I was but you're the only ones I texted about. I mean, I didn't like text, you know, I mean, it's one of those weird things where, like, and that's the thing, like, I don't want this to come across as like, oh, we're snarky movie critics.
Yeah, no.
General audiences, you know, won't watch this. That's
I
not
hope
what we're
so.
saying.
Be great.
It's more of we just understand that this is very niche. This is a very specific, very niche thing that Fincher's playing with here. It doesn't have broad appeal.
Right.
I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
Question for you guys: is a black and white movie about movie making that's about making one of the most seminal films in film history, in Hollywood history, is this the most Oscar baity movie that Netflix has ever produced?
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
really
it really
just the
does
goal?
feel
Like
like
that-
it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the checklist to go down it is so insane.
That's just what they were going for. They're not
Right.
worried about 200 million people seeing this. They're like,
Right.
we need Academy voters to see this.
Yeah. Actually, Gabe, that's actually a brilliant point, because you make
mean,
a
they've
movie
been
like
chasing it.
this. That's actually a really good point, because Gabe might have hit something that I think is actually kind of genius, because maybe they
Thank you.
intended this film to not. Yeah, maybe they were like, you know what? We'll cut our losses. It won't get 75 million households like the old guard did in the first 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But we'll have that nominated for 12 Oscars this year.
yeah.
Fincher, direct. I mean, you're right. It's almost like they can flex with
Yeah.
a great film like this and cut their losses on it not being a general audience
Right.
film.
I will say though, if they come out the weekend after and they're like, we had 200 million people watch this, I'll give the Jake, but did it? But did they really?
Well, I listen, here's the thing. I've been on record. I'm not the biggest Citizen Kane fan. I revisited it recently. I like the film. I admire it. And we're going to get into Rebecca today, because I watched Hitchcock's Rebecca over the weekend, which I think is a better version of Citizen Kane. But I am very interested to see how this plays. It is, like you said, the old style, Gabe. It's funny you bring that up, because I actually noticed, I've been watching a lot of older films recently, the way audio sounded in older films when people talked, there was almost like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a sound quality to older voices that had like a crunchy sound to it, like the way old audio sounds in movies. It's like I don't know how to explain the word I'm looking for. But there was a set, like if you listen to old dialogue, like Jimmy Stewart in Rear Window, or their dialogue sounds a little like a little crispy with like a little crunch to it, and then it gets cleaner as cinema history goes on. The audio in the Mank trailer sounded like old school audio. I don't know if that was my headphones or if Fincher did that on purpose, but going back to the point about making the film look like a old school film, those like really interesting edits, the circle wipes that they were doing with like the cuts in between, it was very old school. I wonder if he messed with the audio at all. I want to know
It's
that.
interesting.
Knowing Fincher.
Yeah, I'm sure. And one thing I had never, I've never thought about, now I want to look up, is when we talk a lot about when filming turned digital from like the visual aspect, but I wonder when they stopped recording analog audio and started recording digital audio, because I'm sure that sound comes from that analog process, and whether it's old movies with like a phonograph or something versus some tape. That's interesting.
And there is, by the way, a strange irony about watching the Mank trailer, which was shot digitally, and seeing film cameras in there, which is very interesting to me, because if Fincher was ever going to return to 35, this is the one I thought he would have returned to it on. But I will say this, because I can admit when I'm wrong, it looks like film. That trailer, but you can manipulate, you can add grain, and black and white really helps you. I think black and white really kind of like the look of 35 black and white is just monumental. I mean, and I think that there's a way, if you shoot black and white digitally, you can still kind of try to achieve that look. And I think Fincher's well versed enough in digital to understand that. So
we gotta move. But what is Ma Rainey, Kevin? I have no clue what this is.
Yeah. So this is amazing. So I had the opportunity the other day to go to a virtual event for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which Ma Rainey, the mother of blues, Viola Davis is playing the character in the film. And
this is a true story?
Yeah, it's based upon a recording session that happened in 1927 in Chicago.
Okay.
And Chadwick Boseman's character is Levy, and he plays the trumpet horn, and he is basically at odds with Ma Rainey for the day of the recording. They're kind of like he has his own artistic vision, she has her own artistic vision, and based on the scenes that I saw, it's directed by a guy named George C. Wolfe, who I'm not too familiar with, but I saw 5 scenes. It's Chadwick's final film performance. And it's one of those weird things where, like, when you know someone has passed away, it's in the back of your mind that they passed away. So you have to try and not let that affect the way you feel about the performance. Like, I felt like when I watched Ledger in The Dark Knight, I forgot he passed away because he became the character. He was no longer Ledger. He was the Joker. In this case, same thing. Like, what I love about Chadwick Boseman and the idea of the roles he chose before he passed away is he chose important films to do before he died. Think about what he did. Five Bloods, Black Panther, now Ma Rainey. He clearly, in my opinion, I don't know this for sure, but he clearly chose projects that were going to be legacy and very important work that people could still chew on years later and remember what messages were there. The electricity of this performance, it's so electric. I have the energy from what I experienced in the trailer and the 5 scenes. Chadwick loved acting. I mean, like Viola Davis was talking about this in the press conference about, he's an artist, and he committed everything to it, and you can see it in this trailer and in the footage. And today they announced, I saw it on Twitter. I don't know who to credit for this, but I saw it on Twitter. They are going to be putting Viola Davis up for lead and Chadwick Boseman up for lead. I thought Chadwick was going to be supporting because it's about Ma Rainey. Yeah. But the film is more about them being at odds together. I think Viola Davis, the transformation, if you look up the real Ma Rainey and look at her performance, I think she's going to win the Oscar this year. I mean, her performance is, and again, this is just based on footage I saw. I think 5 scenes, I think Chadwick could win.
It's interesting they're putting him lead because they're going to directly put him up against Delroy then.
Delroy, which it's weird. I actually, if again, I haven't seen the movies, I don't know how leading he is, but if you look at the poster for Ma Rainey, it's Viola and Chadwick. Yeah. They're on the poster together. It's their story. But it's an interesting.
Could you position Delroy in supporting? I just want him to win, whatever it takes.
Delroy would be leading because
it has to be. Yeah.
I bet you. I think I know what's going to happen here. Chadwick's going to get nominated for supporting for Five Bloods and then leading for Ma Rainey.
You think that's how the Academy will handle it?
I think Netflix is like, again, I don't know for sure, but if I'm Netflix,
it'd be interesting to see.
Because Chadwick's great in Five Bloods. It's a small role. It's
very small role, but he's great.
But there's going to be so many performances from Chicago 7 that Netflix is going to back all in supporting. Who's the lead in that?
Netflix just shotgun blasted the Oscars this year.
They really have.
Did we win an Oscar? All the nominees are ours. So
they're tired of losing.
I like Gabe's thinking on Mank. You let Fincher make a movie called Mank based on the writing of Citizen Kane because you know it's going to get Oscars. I don't even think they're worried about viewership now that Gabe said that. I'm like, you know what? Of course, it's
I think when you make a black and white movie, you throw viewership out the door.
Yeah. I think they're going to win an Oscar this year, finally. They have to, right? Because what else is out there that could beat Netflix for Best Picture? Because you have Chicago 7's going to be up. Mank will be up. Five Bloods will be up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't...
Well, there's a couple other big movies coming.
Still?
It did, it certainly did.
I saw that in theater.
Vin Diesel. All right, so look out for both Mank and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
December 18th on Netflix. And look at the trailer. And again, I understand people might be hesitant and go, oh, you're only liking it because Chadwick passed away and like his performance, whatever. It's nothing to do with that. The kid is just one of the greatest actors. So good.
I'm excited to see it.
I hate, I don't use the word hate often. I hated when people told me that I only liked Ledger because he died.
Oh, that's crazy.
People would always say that. Oh, dude, like you would say like Ledger was phenomenal, the film, and people would go, is it because he passed away though? I'm like, no.
He reinvented a character, a classic character.
Yeah. People judge people when on that stuff. I got questioned on that sometimes. Like when I was reviewing Ledger's performance, they were like, you're only liking because he passed away. I'm like, no, the performance is brilliant.
Yeah. Kevin, you gave me a tremendous transition without even knowing that we're going to now shift to the news that broke right as we were starting to record this episode, that Jared Leto is going to be playing the Joker in Zack Snyder's Justice League.
I'm happy about this, by the way.
So it's exciting for this reason. He's coming back to be part of the reshoots, which are happening, or additional photography, which is happening right now in Los Angeles. It connects Zack Snyder's Justice League even closer to David Ayer's Suicide Squad, because that's where Leto's Joker got introduced. If you remember, Leto's Joker is not supposed to be in Justice. He's not in Justice League at all. He didn't show up. He didn't even show up in BVS. Like, he wrote on the Robin suit, and you knew that he was responsible for murdering the Robin that Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne had, but he doesn't show up. So this is an additional character who's being brought in for more photography, which to me means that they are setting up or teasing additional stories that are going to get told. Which to me seems like they're going to be bringing back Ben Affleck to play his Batman in an arc that will include his Joker. If there were existing Joker scenes that I thought that Zack needed to complete, then I would understand them bringing in Jared Leto. But the fact that they're literally bringing him in during COVID to participate in this additional photography means that he's going to be a significant part, and he's going to probably, I would assume, help. It's not like a throwaway, unless this is the new mid-credits quote unquote scene, that's going to be, it's a 4-hour television series now at this point. But if this is the new scene that sets up something that might be coming and we might get more Ben Affleck, it's all theory at this point now, but it's confirmed that Hollywood Reporter reported right as we were going on here that we're getting more Jared Leto as the Joker.
Before we move on,
for you.
Sorry, I'm curious, Sean.
Yes.
In the last hour and a half or so since this broke, how many tweets have you gotten of, so the Snyder Cut never existed?
I haven't even looked. I was so afraid to look at my timeline.
So it was never real.
Jeez.
What people always come out and say.
Of course, that is, then you're not really getting the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
This is a whole new
that was
thing.
my question, actually, Sean, because the whole idea of the Snyder Cut is that we are going to see Snyder's version of the Justice League film that didn't come out. Is adding stuff like that taking away from what the cut would have been?
Can I answer that for you, Sean? Well,
sure.
not for you, but for me. And then if you agree, feel free to agree.
Sure.
I think the notion that Snyder was going to walk into an editing bay and then we'd have an artist in any format go, now what would I have done 4 years ago? And then try to make decisions that it makes no sense. It was never going to be what we potentially would have gotten. It was always going to be who Zack is now, how he's been affected by the whole thing and his life in general. Like, we were always going to get a new interpretation of it, I think, because he's an artist and that's what he goes into.
Yeah. And also, if a company like HBO Max comes around and says, hey, we're willing to give you $80 million to add more to it, is the idea that he'd be like, no, I can't. Thank you very much. But
I just wanted to add some color grade
of the 2016 cut has to stay in place.
Yeah.
So of course, if he's given an opportunity to go back and rework or punch up or change and reshape, or they could even have had conversations behind the scenes that said like, hey, we would like to keep going down the road on this. How do you need to change some of your scenes to bridge towards additional storytelling? That's what I think is probably happening, because the thing that he loves the most about it is how he's free from everything that's happening in the DCEU on the theatrical side. Yeah. So he doesn't have to line up with those films. He doesn't have to tease the next 5 films on Warner Brothers slate. He can truly control everything that's coming to HBO Max. And as we keep talking about even earlier in this show, these streaming services are getting much more powerful. They're increasing their budgets. We're going to talk about The Mandalorian when that show comes back around again. I think you're going to see the production values on the episodes of The Mandalorian go through the roof because Disney Plus now realizes, A, they don't have anything from Star Wars coming anytime soon. So you might as well invest in this right now and keep the brand alive. B, they know that it's a hit show. The people are invested in the characters and they love Baby Yoda and they want to see where it's going. So why not pour money into that now and hit people while they're engaged and sell toys? They're going to want to sell so many toys going into the holiday season. So
Sean, I want to say one thing about Jared Leto. And I'm sure this is probably, I don't know if this is a controversial opinion. I actually felt bad about what happened to him on Suicide Squad. And here's why I say that. I think that he shot more than what ended up in the film. His role was very reduced in Suicide Squad. I think Jared Leto is a phenomenal actor. I guarantee you he put a lot of work into that character. That movie was destroyed. It was, critically destroyed. It was, we all know what happened with Suicide Squad. I've actually always kind of felt weirdly bad for Leto in that situation. And I get it. He's a successful actor. He has millions of dollars, he has millions of fans. I'm not saying it from that perspective. I just know that Leto puts the work in. And I feel like he did not get to show. I actually liked his Joker for what it was, but it was a very but the way it was portrayed in the film and how minimal his part was, I think did a disservice to the work he did with Air. That's why I'm actually really excited about this, because I think Snyder might be able to give Leto that element again. Yeah. Like let me let you shine. Let me let you show people what you were going to do, because there were so many things about that character visually and dialogue wise that I found that there could have been so much more with him. And I think with Snyder, I'm actually happy for Leto in this situation. I want Leto to be able to basically like retcon what happened, because he is hands down the most hated Joker. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Generally,
not even close.
But it's not his fault, and that's what I was telling Lauren earlier. We were watching the new Rebecca film, and we'll get into the review later. I didn't love it, but like we were saying to ourselves, is it the actor's fault, or is it the editing, is the directing? And you think about these films, a movie can be made or broken in an edit. You can ruin someone's performance in an edit, for sure. And I think that's why I'm happy for Leto. So that's why I say that.
I'm thrilled as well, too. So I can't wait to see what he does with Zach. I want to really touch briefly on two films that we're going to be discussing for weeks to come, because this past weekend I got to get out to a film festival of all things, which is insanity. I went to Chapel Hill here in North Carolina and attended the 919 Film Festival. I was able to see two films that are going to be on our radars as we get through the award season. First one is called Nomadland. It's directed by Chloe Zhao, who is also directing the Eternals, Marvel's film. She did a movie called The Rider. It's Francis McDormand, and she essentially plays a woman who lives in a Nevada town whose entire existence is reliant on an industry, and the industry happens to go away. So everybody's sort of struggling to find jobs. What are they going to do? She adapts to the nomadic lifestyle, which I didn't realize was something that people do in our country. They essentially, she lives in a van, moves around from campsite to campsite, works menial jobs, does work at Amazon actually in seasonal time, and was just a fascinating portrayal of this woman and this lifestyle. It uses, her co-stars are all people who are in the nomadic community as well too. She has like David Strathairn plays a romantic interest, but she does have, but most of the people who show up are people who are nomads in real life. So we'll talk about more as that gets a release date. The other one is Regina King's movie, One Night in Miami, which I didn't realize.
I'm so excited for this.
So I was super ignorant. I didn't know that it was a stage show. It's a play. And it plays like a play. Like you realize as you're seeing it, they're contained to multiple, like a couple of different locations, but primarily a hotel room the night after Muhammad Ali fights Floyd Lister? I forget who he fights. Dang it. Anyway, the kid who plays Muhammad Ali is phenomenal. You have these four predominant African-American characters. It's Sam Cooke and
Malcolm
X and Cassius Clay, who's contemplating joining the Nation of Islam, and Jim Brown. These four influential figures in different realms of our culture: sports realm, the music environment, and the political landscape and religion for Malcolm X. And it's like their responsibility to be the voice of their people at that time, and how some of them are torn in different directions. There's some really extremely relevant topics that really make you stop and think. It's the type of movie that I can't process, because I gotta see it again. There's a ton of conversational information being put forward about like how this movie wants you to pick up the threads and keep exploring it. But damn if Regina King didn't just, announce her presence as a tremendous storyteller. Her casting's great. I think it's going to be one of those movies that we're going to be talking about all the way through the award season. So I'm excited for you guys to see it too. And be able to weigh in. Yeah, it's tremendous. This weekend movies, let's jump to a couple of the ones that are opening theatrically and on the streaming services. So The Empty Man is that theatrical movie that Disney Fox is sort of dumping. It's a horror movie. So. It looks just like a movie.
It looks pretty. It looks okay. Like the trailer. All I saw was the trailer. And it looks like it could be thrilling, but it doesn't look like anything special.
No. Kev, I'm with you on Rebecca. I thought it was really pretty to look at, but it didn't hook me in the least bit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so I rewatched Hitchcock's 1940 film over the weekend, which is, by the way, is 80 years old, and it's a masterpiece. It's still...
He won Best Picture.
It is just so good. I mean, it's intense. Laurence Olivier's amazing. Joan Fontaine's amazing. It is such a great film. Also, one thing I love about Hitchcock's movie is the aspect ratio. It's a bit taller. So... the look of that film, the views of that film, the house that they're in, the mansion that they're in, I like the taller aspect ratio, right? And in the new Rebecca, it's more widescreen, and I'm like watching it last night, I'm like, they could have opened this up. Like there's these gorgeous hallway scenes where Lily James is walking down the hallway. I'm like, this would have been a great in like a 1:6:6 or like a, even a 4:3, whatever it would have been. It needed a taller frame, in my personal opinion. I called it
architecture porn. Like there's really beautiful shots and sequences, and even when they're in Monte Carlo early on, like the location shooting is beautiful. It's gorgeous to look at. I think it's really gorgeous to look at, but it's just hollow.
Well, here's the thing about the original Hitchcock film is story-wise, character-wise, is much more intense. It's a lot more, in my opinion, on the vague side. This particular film feels cold. It feels melodramatic. I don't think Armie Hammer was right. I think they should have hired a British actor because the accent was throwing me. I think Armie Hammer is a great actor. Don't get me wrong, and I do think that people can play with accents, and I have no problem with people doing that. But Armie Hammer, I didn't think was the right fit for this role. I didn't find his English accent to be believable. I kept hearing Armie Hammer trying to do a British accent. And I think Lily James is wonderful. I love her. She's great with what she has to in this film. So this is directed by a guy named Ben Wheatley who did Free Fire, and it's a hard thing to do to take on a project like this. I mean, you're not remaking because it's not really a remake. It's based on the book, technically speaking, but it's still a very big undertaking, especially when you have Hitchcock directing it in 1940. And to be honest with you, I think Hitchcock's film looks better, it sounds better, it flows better, it's paced better, and it's 80 years old. And I think the what I learned about it is that timeless film, the idea of timeless nature in film is such a powerful tool. I mean, Rebecca still plays beautifully 80 years later. I did not think this film needed to be made. It was unnecessary, and I didn't find it to be engaging. It was very melodramatic, personally.
Did either of you guys see The Witches?
Nope. I have it, but I'm going to watch it tomorrow night, I think.
All right. I'll give everybody a quick spoiler-free reaction to it. I expected to not like this film, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm pleasantly surprised at how well it plays. It's Robert Zemeckis. It looked like sometimes when Zemeckis does like a kid movie, like Polar Express or some such, that he just goes too far into the corny artificialness of it. I do not know the original, the one
I
that
watched
has
the original.
Did you really?
Yeah, a couple days ago on Netflix.
What year is that from? Like 90s?
1990. It's 30 years old. Dude, the special effects makeup in the original Witches is some of the coolest animatronic visual effects I have ever seen. Like my wife Lauren put it on because we're anticipating the new Witches. Yeah. And I was like, she's like, Kevin, trust me, you got to watch this. You're gonna love it's almost like Tom Savini level, like visual, like old school, like makeup effects and Nicotero kind of stuff, right?
You might dig this then. You might dig the new one.
Frightening. Angelica Houston is so great. So let me ask you this: there's a very famous scene in the original Witches that I'm interested to know if they do it in the new one, where they're in this like conference room with a bunch of women, and Angelica Houston takes the stage and then reveals herself as the witch. Do they do that in the new one? So Anne Hathaway? Okay, cool. I thought that scene was wonderful, and I can't wait to I'm excited about Anne Hathaway doing it. And honest with you,
yeah, I mean, there's no surprise on this show. I am not a fan, not a huge fan of Anne Hathaway, and she was amazing in this. Totally won me over.
I'm excited.
Hey, breaking news! Anne Hathaway's got talent, right? she can actually act.
She's awesome.
So yeah, I dug it, and it gets a little bit goofy. There's a moment in the film, and again, I haven't seen the original, so does this happen? The kids get turned into mice. Kev, does that happen in the movie?
I was just about to break. I literally was about to ask you if the mice were in the film. Yeah. So in the original film, they do the mice with animatronics. It's really cool. Like they had real mice that were for like the long shots. Yeah. But then when they actually, because the mice talk, do they talk in the new one?
They do talk in the new one. Yeah.
So they actually built these animatronic mice or mouses, whatever you want to call them. Nice. And like you're watching them animatronically interact with each other. Do they go CG in this one?
They go CG. Yeah.
See, that's the problem. See, I'm telling you, like I was blown away by the practical effects in 1990. I didn't ever even heard of The Witches before until this new one was coming out. And it's on Netflix. Anybody listening to our show, if you want to watch the original Witches, it's surprisingly awesome. Like, I was shocked how crazy. It's scary.
And this one's coming to HBO Max. It'll be there on October 23rd. Over the Moon is an animated film that Netflix is plugging heavily. Either of you guys seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. We did. I didn't do interviews. We did interviews for CinemaBlend that I cut, and it sounds super interesting. It sounds like a fun kids movie.
And Philippa Sue from Hamilton.
Hamilton. All right, so let's get into Borat subsequent movie film. Jeez. Coming to Amazon Prime on October 23rd. I'll kick off the conversation by saying that this movie is pure insanity. I
haven't seen it yet, so this is exciting.
Yeah, for me to hear. And we're not going to spoil. We're not going to spoil anything. We want you to be able to listen to this show and still be able to go check out the movie on Friday. It's not like there's a plot, but there's obviously with him. He works his way into situations. Using, and especially in this one too, and I love the way that they address in this one that the Borat character is so recognizable that the minute he arrives in America, he just gets inundated by people who want autographs from him or want to take pictures with him. So he has to, it's weird. Sacha Baron Cohen, who is disguised as Borat, has to disguise Borat, and the ways that he disguises himself throughout the movie get funnier and funnier. But the true, so I ended up giving this movie 4 out of 5, Kev, because I just thought that the structure of it is still incredibly loose. It's just a series of, for the most part, outrageous situations that he can get himself into in order to expose the ignorance of people, of Americans, essentially. And it broke my heart that like halfway through, I went to the IMDb page to check and see where they filmed it. And it's Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's about 90 minutes away from Charlotte, North Carolina. And my people do not look good in this movie. Not in one way, shape, or form. But the true selling point, I just think Borat as a character is still incredibly funny. It's as insensitive a movie as you can imagine right now. Like the humor it's offensive to everybody. Like every group that you think is going to get mad by this movie is going to get mad. But the character that they introduce is his daughter, and her name, she's played by an actress named Maria Badalova. Is that right?
Is it Maria Bakalov? Yeah, I'll double check it.
Okay, check it. She's phenomenal.
New, so,
oh my God. She is unbelievably great. She does Sacha Baron Cohen as well as Sacha Baron Cohen does. And she has to be as quick as he is. She gets thrown into situations where she has to improvise in front of people, and she's just fantastic. So I think this movie is incredibly funny. I would absolutely recommend it. I think the shock value of the Borat concept has worn just a little bit, but Sacha Baron Cohen figures out a way to get over that really quickly. And it just goes to show that there's still plenty of things to poke fun of. The first one came out in 2006. So you're talking, all these years later, and there are reasons that he is trying to get this movie out ahead of the election. There are political points trying to be made. There's social points trying to be made. And but more importantly, more than anything else, it is one of the most laugh out loud funny movies that I've seen in a really long time. And a lot of my laughter was triggered by just being completely shocked by what I was watching play out, because I could not believe that he was able to pull off some of the things he pulled off in this movie.
I think what I loved about it was the emotion. I actually think that there's a good through line and a good story here. The basic premise of the film, it's a joke, but the character of Borat is trying to deliver his 15-year-old daughter to Mike Pence. Like that's the concept of the story. That's in the trailer. We know that. As a gift, essentially.
It's in the original title of the film as well.
Right. So
very long title.
But what's crazy about the Borat movie is, from what I understand, I mean, obviously you have the two actors who are playing Borat and the daughter, Sacha Baron Cohen, and this new actress who's absolutely
is the character's name Tutar?
phenomenal. I mean, she is incredible. So what I love about this film is that at the end of the day, it is insanely shocking, but I felt emotionally invested in their arc. And I know I understand that it's going for shock value, but there's something really sweet about some of these scenes that the daughter has with the people that she runs into. And I won't go into too many details, but there's a specific woman that the daughter has a lot of scenes with that I thought were so powerful and said, but they said so much. I mean, she was amazing. She was amazing. And I think what's interesting about this film is he lets the people they run into tell the story of our country.
Yes, 100%.
The movie basically is a reflection of how divided our country is. I know you're laughing, but
I love that Kevin is having this very serious.
Kevin is right. Kevin is right.
And Sean's just laughing at some lewd joke that was made, or whatever is funny.
That's what's weird is that I am with Sean on the shock and the humor. There was a scene in this film that I think is genuinely, I agree with Seth Rogen, one of the funniest things I have ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
I was on a couch last night with Lauren. I have never seen Lauren laugh that hard. I almost fell off the couch. I couldn't breathe. And all I will say is the word dance. That's all I'm going to say. But that's what makes this movie brilliant for me is you go from shock to real, to shock to real. And you're dealing with real social, political issues while making fun of it, but also exposing our country. And it's a very, very, it's kind of a brilliant way they do it. Taking the shock away from it. I feel like that's the thing about comedy sometimes is you go into a comedy and people don't want to take it seriously. People don't want to take the messages seriously. They just want to laugh. But I think if you ask Sacha Baron Cohen his intentions for this film, it would be exactly what I'm saying right now. It would be that he wanted to show our country, get a message out there. And you do that through comedy because comedy makes us laugh. It creates a reaction in us. But at the same time, their performance, as you were saying, Sean, she's so brilliant. I think she's as good, if not better, than Sacha Baron Cohen in the film. She is brilliant, this actress. I've never seen her before. She's phenomenal. And I know Sean's laughing.
I keep remembering scenes of her and how good she is.
She's phenomenal.
My God.
But one thing I will say is, the editing there's a lot going on. But I want to see the movie about the making of this film. Yeah. Because we were discussing this earlier about how they're able to get these shots. And Sean brought up an interesting point about how Borat has to disguise himself. Because if you think about it, when Borat goes into a situation in 2020, it's different than going into a situation when you were in 2006. Because not a lot of people might have known who Borat was before the Borat movie came out, unless you watched the Ali G show and things like that. But Borat wasn't as, I don't think, before the first Borat movie, as certainly recognizable or as famous as he is now. So he clearly can't go into situations as Borat. So they write that part in, Sean, brilliantly. Because they basically give him the excuse to not be Borat, to show up at scenes that people wouldn't recognize him for.
Right.
And from what I understand, and this is just what I've gathered from reading things about these films over the years, from what I understand, what they do is the reason they're able to get people on camera with these scenes is because they're signing documents that essentially say something along the lines of, we're filming a documentary about a guy coming from a different country who's trying to integrate into our culture, and we want to capture it on film. That's kind of what I gather how they do it. If you watch the movie closely, you'll see blurred faces. You'll see faces that are blurred. And the reason those are blurred is because they didn't get the right to actually put them in the film. So people are signing documents. And these are not actors. These are people. There's a guy. The guy in the fax store. He's with real people, and that's what makes the movie brilliant. Is you're getting these genuine reactions. I want to ask a question though,
because there's one or two scenes that pop up, and without giving anything away, that seem there's no way that he could have done it. For one, the country band that plays behind him.
I'll tell you how they did that. So I had questions about that too.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it offline. Let's talk about it offline.
I was gonna say, is this interesting to anybody who hasn't seen it?
I can keep this super vague. All Sean's referring to is a moment where Borat takes a stage at an actual event and performs. And the question Sean is asking is, how could they have possibly let that happen?
Yeah.
Lauren and I had the exact same discussion last night over text, right when we were watching the movie. Here's how I think he did that, and I'll keep this super vague. I think he genuinely signed up for that show as that character, got chosen to be a part of the show, and because you think about it, this takes planning.
Oh, it takes so much planning. Yes.
So in order for a character Borat is playing to get on stage at a concert to play as part of a festival wherever he was, the work that goes into that scene, in my opinion, would be him literally signing up, getting approved, getting there, and doing that moment. So you're saying that you think that was staged. That's how I think he did it. It feels
staged because he turns around and talks to the musicians, and then they have to play a song that he needs them to play. And so you'll see as you guys are watching.
They're not actors.
Yeah, they're not. Pay attention to all of those things. But either way,
that's what makes it exciting.
We both highly recommend it. It's
so
really, really funny. Kevin puts it in his top 10 for the year.
Because I think it's a brilliant film that we need right now. And listen, I understand politically people are very divided in this country, and I completely understand that you may look at this film as a Trump bashing movie. I think it's bigger than that. I think it's a film that genuinely exposes, like, there are two specific people that I think are on opposing sides of our country in regards to politics that are part of this story that they run into in the story that are like, that show our country. That is our country. And it's like, it's kind of amazing what he pulls off in this movie. And I tip my hat to him.
This is probably a silly question, but I wonder if people are thinking this before we move on. If someone hasn't seen the original, do they need to see it to understand anything about Borat, or is it just...
No. They do a pretty decent setup. Yeah, they do a pretty decent setup, too.
I figured.
More like, so than you would even expect.
They show him at the premiere. They actually show footage of the real Borat premiere. Yeah. Because when Sacha Baron Cohen does press for these movies, he does them in character. Yeah. Like, I interviewed him for Bruno, and I had to and you had to do it in character. And he's outstanding.
He's great. Okay, let's get to this week's blend game, which is hashtag SciFiHorrorBlend. Gabe, why don't you kick us off? Because you don't get to play the blend game that often.
Yeah, you guys know that I don't love picking these because I'm bad at favorites.
Right.
But this one was, I think for me, was pretty easy because I think there's a film that is a fantastic film and is a perfect example of the genre all at the same time that I happen to love. And so my favorite sci-fi horror blend film would have to be Alien, the first Alien.
Okay.
I think it's undoubtedly sci-fi in its setting and its characters and even the plot and what's going on. It's very much a sci-fi film, but it uses raw and pure horror techniques with both the monster and kind of everything that Ripley runs into. I fell in love with Alien when I was a little kid, as a little kid who loved horror movies. And to this day, it still holds up. So
controversial
for me, that was
pick.
the only choice.
Great choice.
Yeah.
Going out on a limb. Kevin, where are you at? Sci-fi horror blend.
I'm going to go a little more modern. And while I understand the appeal
he's going to go Borat 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go Borat 2. No, I went with The Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Tremendous.
And Sigourney Weaver, there's our through line.
Yeah.
I think, when Lauren and I saw Cabin in the Woods for the first time, it felt like the first time I saw Scream. And I'm not saying Scream's a sci-fi horror film, but I mean it in the sense of it changed, in my opinion, it changed the genre. It moved the genre forward. It created a different way to look at the genre. And Cabin in the Woods is a film that sat on the shelf for 3 or so years. Drew Goddard directed it. Whedon wrote it, I believe. And so it was.
And they had Chris Hemsworth in it, for God's sakes.
Right. And so this comes out
technically pre-Thor, Chris Hemsworth.
You're right. And it came out in the middle of the MCU, which is kind of weird, right? So Hemsworth in this film, I mean, the sci-fi element is undeniable. I'm not going to spoil anything. But there is a reveal in this movie that brings the sci-fi element into it. And all I will say is the elevator scene, they're riding the elevator, is truly one of the most insane sequences I've ever seen in a film. Like do you guys remember the edit in the movie? Remember the edit in the film when they're in the hallway of the elevator lobby and it dings and they all come out?
Yes.
Just insanity. So the cool thing about I also love that the stoner in that movie is the smart one. Like that was kind of like they played with stereotypes and different things in a really fun way. But Hemsworth is great in it. If people aren't familiar with it, imagine it like an Evil Dead movie, but with like a sci-fi spin. Specifically, they go out to a cabin in the woods, literally, and things start happening in the cabin that are strange. People start dying, and then we learn through the film that something. I won't say anything, but I want to say this: Richard Jenkins is so good in this movie. Everybody, the cast is who plays
Bradley
Jenkins?
Whitford. Bradley Whitford.
Jenkins and Whitford have some of the best banter. Like this movie is so good. I know it's kind of underrated. It didn't make a ton of money, but if you haven't seen it, seek it out. It is genuinely one of the most pleasantly surprising, awesome sci-fi horror films ever. I was gonna go with The Thing, but I love The Thing. But I just feel like Cabin in the Woods had such a massive impression on me, and I love that movie. So,
and I'll add, Cabin in the Woods is one of those special horror movies where if I have friends or people that like don't really watch horror, don't really like horror, or they're worried about jump scares or whatever, it's one of those that is so elevated in a unique way and so entertaining in a unique way that I recommend it to those people. I'm like, you'll still love this.
It's a good point because like it while it is a graphically disgusting film at times, it always feels fun.
Oh yeah.
It's not like
it's
you're not
always
like
taking the trope or the cliche and doing it on purpose as the joke kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not to the point where it's self-aware where it's like a spoof. It's a genuine horror film.
Yeah.
They teeter that line perfectly. It doesn't become a joke. It just has a very fun. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some death scenes that are disgusting. Like there are some brutal stuff in this film. So it does get violent. I mean, don't watch it with your kids.
Have you watched
obviously.
Freaky yet? Did you see Freaky yet?
No, I want to see Freaky. I haven't seen it yet with Vince Vaughn.
I saw Freaky this week, and that movie, when we get to talk about that movie, the death scenes in it are
they freaky?
The charts.
Can't wait.
They are off the charts.
I'm excited.
We'll talk about it.
All right, Sean, I'm curious to hear yours.
Yeah, because I made that Night of the Creeps pick the other week.
And someone sent you a DVD today.
Yes, I've gotten really good reactions from people who are liking the older picks. I went and sought out a 1986 film called Chopping Mall. Have you guys heard of Chopping Mall?
No.
That's the greatest title I've ever heard. How have I not seen this?
It's tremendous. It's Chopping Mall. And it's literally these employees. It's like Mallrats, but a horror movie.
Sounds great.
These kids who work at like 20-something kids who work at a mall, a shopping mall, who stay after hours and lock all their stores down, and they decide they're going to have a party in their in the showrooms or behind the scenes of their stores. They get pizza, they get booze, they start hooking up, and the robot security system in the mall malfunctions and goes on a killing spree. And it's literally just the Chopping Mall, and it's tremendous.
Oh, I'm already sold.
It's incredibly cheesy.
I'm buying it right now.
But
that's the best title I've ever heard in my entire life.
It's great.
It's brilliant.
And again, it's technology going haywire. It's got all the great 80s things that you love about it, and the fact that it's really overstated, and the kills are incredibly gory. And so, is it my favorite? No, I love it. I think it's tremendous, but I kind of wanted to call it out just to put it on people's radars. So.
Hey guys, sorry I can't be with you this week. I am doing a little journey here out in the middle of the woods, as you can see. But I did want to weigh in with my pick for SciFiHorrorBlend. And it's a boring, unsexy choice, but the obvious choice, of course, is Alien. Not only is it one of the greatest films of all time, it obviously ranks among the greatest sci-fi films of all time. And yes, it is absolutely terrifying. It's basically Jaws in space. But like the shark was in Jaws, the xenomorph is just this perfectly manicured monster within the confines of space. You have a creature with acid blood, so if you attempt to shoot him or stab him, you risk killing yourself because the acid could eat through the hull of the ship and open up a portal into space, and then you're all dead. So the design, the H.R. Geiger designs of the xenomorph were absolutely gorgeous. The creation of Ripley, Sigourney Weaver's character, one of the greatest characters in the history of cinema, not just within the action or the horror or the sci-fi genre, but just the genre period. And it's a beautiful film. Obviously, James Cameron took it into a much more action kind of thriller, which I think is what raises the question of whether or not Alien fits. But the very first Alien is absolutely a horror film. It's absolutely one of the greatest horror films of all time. And yes, obviously it fits within the sci-fi realm because you have, the alien element, the space element. But hope it's not too boring of a pick. I have a feeling I may not be the only one to have picked this. Maybe you guys branched out a little bit more, but it's how I feel. It's how Daenerys feels. She feels that way too. And hope you guys have a good show. Talk to you next week.
This is a stupid question. Are zombies sci-fi?
No, I don't think so.
It depends on the. There are different kinds of zombies. Some of them are like resurrected for like
Interesting.
Paranormal reasons or like demonic reasons, but some of them are like I would say a 28 Days Later or like a Resident Evil. It's because of like a science experiment. So like
Interesting.
Technically it's science. I think it depends on the origin story.
I wonder why. Yeah, I've actually never thought about it before because I think to myself.
I mean, I guess
zombies,
technically it is because they don't exist.
But
Wait, I want to throw this one at you. Craig D, going to audience picks, he picked T2. I don't consider T2 to be a horror movie.
It's funny because then we go back to the age-old debate that Jake and I had about T-1000 being a monster.
Yeah.
Is T1 more of a horror movie than T2?
Yes, I think so.
Right? That was my issue with it.
Yeah, T1 is the alien and T2 is aliens.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
That's
what's funny about
Jim
will say
Cameron
this, though,
had it again.
I want to give my producer Chris credit for this. This morning we were doing a story about like technology and like the horrors of things, and he put on Brad Feidel's T2 score underneath the segment as the story was being told. And I literally messaged him on our little chat function. I said, "Dude, this is like genuinely a horror segment. It sounds like a horror, because if you think about that music, I mean, T2 is pretty terrifying. I will argue
it's
certainly thrilling.
I wouldn't argue sci-fi horror, but I will tell you that it has one of the most horrific scenes I've ever seen in a movie, and that's Linda Hamilton's fence shot as she just disintegrates into nothing. And like that, and I don't know, and this kind of goes into that age-old debate of what's horror, what's sci-fi.
Right. Like just because a movie uses like in one or two places uses like a horror trope or tactic in its filmmaking, does that make it horror movie?
I mean, the T-1000 is supposed to be scary, It's supposed to be a terrifying, relentless thing, but I feel it's more sci-fi, a stronger sci-fi vibe than than horror.
I guess So what are some other sci-fi horror picks that we would think of?
Okay. So Rachel KH chose Danny Boyle's Sunshine. Brody, Cottenham, Adam Kahn, and many others went with Alien. Johnny Cat, Cardi, Dante, and many others went with John Carpenter's The Thing. Vanessa D said that her underrated choices are Mimic and Scanner, but the obvious choice is Alien. Yeah. And then Damian McDonald chose Cube, and I don't know Cube.
Cube is that's a fascinating choice. I was glad someone picked that. It's a really interesting movie. I used to watch it a ton when I was a kid. It's about these people that wake up in a cube. Like people wake up in this room and then they find out that there's more people in rooms that they're joined with. They have no idea why they're there. And they're trying to figure out how to get out, and
I saw that it's called Love is Blind. It's on Netflix.
Very horrifying things begin to happen as they try to traverse the cube.
All right, so wait, okay. So thank you very much for your audience participations. Next week we're playing #Halloween Movie Blend. All right, explain that. Isn't that what we've been doing?
Well, so this will be a film that either very heavily features a set piece. I will let people stretch to like a set piece, like a heavily featured Halloween set piece, but I would love for people to give us their favorite Halloween movie that involves.
Can we take Carpenter's franchise off the board?
I think we should. I think that should be automatic.
That feels too obvious, doesn't it?
As your favorite?
Yeah.
I feel like Halloween.
If listeners want to submit it, absolutely do. We want to know your favorite.
As a challenge to ourselves, we will take
That's
Carpenter's franchise off the board.
To clarify the rules, does the movie have to actually have a Halloween day in the movie? Does it can it be like themed in an October thing? Does it have to be on Halloween?
I like the October theme. I like the idea of the holiday of Halloween being involved, and that stretches beyond horror movies, which I think is fun.
Kevin, you can pick Puby. That's fine.
You can pick Puby.
It's fine.
Wait, so on a serious question, like, does It Follows count?
Is there a Halloween scene in that?
Isn't that in the fall. It's like it's very Carpenter-esque. That's where I'm
that's too October-y.
That's like we would celebrate. That's a festive movie for the Halloween season.
Be tangentially attached to the Halloween.
Give some
season.
Gabe. Give some examples.
Give some examples.
Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat.
The anthology.
There's a bunch of Disney movies that take place at Halloween Town.
Hocus Pocus.
Nightmare Before Christmas technically has a very strong Halloween theme to it.
But see, we get away from we've been stuck in horror. I'm sure there's people that listen that don't necessarily love horror, so we can kind of play around.
I think we can get creative with this.
That's
all right,
fun.
so play along using hashtag Halloween Movie Blend, and the hosts in particular are not going to use John Carpenter's movies. You can send your picks to ReelBlend at cinemablend.com, and that's where you can also send reviews. And this week's comes from the Real Marv from the UK. So Marv is a really great dude, and he actually has put together a podcast whose name I'm blanking on, but it's a podcast about other podcasts, and I was on it. He featured me on it recently, and we talked all about ReelBlend, and he wanted to get insight into how we put the episodes together and how we choose what topics we want to get into and how we get our guests and how we all got to know each other. And he was a terrific interview. And so this is a review from him. He says, to say that ReelBlend is a podcast about film is as big an understatement as to say that someone like Steven Spielberg, Clint Eastwood, or Martin Scorsese have made what? Hold on. Let me. How did I butcher that name so bad? To say that someone like Steven Spielberg, Clint Eastwood, or Martin Scorsese. That's what it's putting the word
a newcomer,
or. But putting or before Martin Scorsese have made some films.
Whatever
With this
you need.
show, you've got three great presenters who bounce off of each other wonderfully, providing their own individual stories and opinions about films in a constructive and straightforward way. These guys love films, and by that I mean that they love the whole experience of film. Their excitement is such that they make films interesting to you. And you may be otherwise that you may otherwise have missed, which is great in a world dominated by blockbusters. I continually recommend this show to everyone that I know, and I will continue to. On a personal note, I've actually talked with Sean, who was as warm as he is on the show. His love of film was obvious and real, and that's what you see in this show. I was lost for words when they said how grateful he was of myself and other blenders for constantly listening and pushing the show. This is essential listening for anyone interested in any aspect of film. But that's super important. Like the community behind this film is behind this podcast is that's what we strive for each and every week. And we want to keep growing the Blender community. And like Kevin said, when if I talk about a stupid movie like Night of the Creeps, and then somebody holds up the DVD on social media and says, "Oh, I have to buy this now." That's tremendous. Like we're spreading the love to one additional person, and then every once in a while we get to talk to people like Adam Brody or Aaron Sorkin or something ridiculous like that. So we're gonna get to wrapping this up, and we're gonna go record our premium episode. To let you guys know, the subject for the next premium episode is a horror movie that you never want to watch again, something that you endured that turned you off so drastically. We have some personal stories about horror that we don't want to see. We'll be back at it next week for the full ReelBlend experience. In the meantime, follow us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, and at Sean_O'Connell, or of course the ReelBlend Twitter account, which is just ReelBlend at ReelBlend. And Gabe, what are you again?
At Gabe Kovac.
At Gabe Kovac.
It'll be, if you're on YouTube, it's right here.
There you go. See, there you go. So we'll be back next week. Thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you next week when we talk more about David Fincher. So I guess we should end with
Hubie.
That's a new one.
No? You guys don't like the Hubie?
I like it.
Hubie.
Hubie.
I don't know why that makes me laugh.